then who is our neighbor if it's not our husband and our children? And I think we struggle sometimes with treating our family the worst,
Yeah.
like we put on a really good face for those outside our home, but we can speak harshly inside the home.
Welcome to the Simplified Organization podcast, 15-minute conversations with real moms about managing our homes and family life cheerfully to the glory of God. We can actually enjoy housework and love being homemakers when we focus on truth and work with gratitude. I'm Mystie Winckler, homemaker for 22 years, homeschool mom of 5 with 2 graduates now, and author of the book Simplified Organization, Learn to Love What Must Be Done. And today I'm joined by Lindsey Stomberg. Lindsey runs the Reformed Faith and Family website and podcast along with her husband, Caleb. Together they have 7 children ranging from 3 to 15. Caleb is a bivocational pastor and Lindsey is a longtime homeschooling mom who enjoys reading to her children, dabbling in homestead hobbies, and being a doula for friends when she gets a chance. Their work on Reformed Faith and Family was born from a deep desire to provide a solid resource for Christians trying to understand the Reformed Christian worldview. So thank you so much for joining me today, Lindsey.
Yes, thank you for having me. This is an honor.
So I think the more kids you add to a mix in the family, the more it can feel like pointless to plan anything.
Absolutely.
Or maybe even get anything done at all.
Yes, that's so true.
So what have you found to be most helpful, or what would you say to the mom who's feeling maybe a little discouraged or just ineffective because she's always scrambling or putting out fires or responding, to those in the moment needs that kids do have?
Oh my goodness, that's such a huge question. And I think that so many moms have that question, whether you have a lot of kids or whether you have a few. Chaos is always coming at you, it feels like, when you have kids, and the seasons change so quickly. So you feel like you're finally settled in a season. Let's say when you have a baby and you finally figured out their ways, how they're going to eat, how they're going to sleep, and then a growth spurt comes
Yes.
on and you have to change gears and start all over. And we think that once we're out of that baby stage, that's going to end. And it doesn't. It just keeps rolling. And so I'm a very type B personality. And I think for a long time, I claimed that as a label. And I think a lot of people in our culture really claim labels, and sometimes it's used as a justification for sins. And I know that I did that with that label of being just type B. And I really loved, just having the ability to adjust on the fly. I didn't like feeling restricted by planners as though I couldn't change my plans. And I did that for a long time, and it was a detriment to both myself and my family. And so even though the seasons were changing and I really was crippled by those changes, I think that as the Lord has disciplined me, let's put it that way, as we've gone along the way. And so I learned quickly that, I'm managing people, not robots. So I thought
Yes.
that maybe I thought in the beginning I could set the tone for my family and everybody would just fall in line with what I set as the plan and the tone. And it's not like that. We're managing people. They're all different. When you have a lot of people in a small environment, you're going to butt heads. And that actually happened with my kids. Like I started butting heads with my kids as they got older because, like my oldest child, she is very type A. She is the exact opposite of me. And so I really had to learn how to adapt to her needs and not expect that she was going to adapt to mine because I'm the adult, right? You can't expect the child to adapt to the adult's needs like that. When you're talking about like how they're educated and things, they have their own brains, they have their own quirks. And so we have to adjust. So whether you have a child that's a type A and you're type B and you have to adjust for personalities, or whether you have a child that's dyslexic, like those
Mhm.
are all, you know, it's hurdles that you have to jump over, and it's different seasons of life, whether they're young or old. And so when they go through puberty, that's another season of life that you have to tackle as a parent. And so what I have learned as I've hit those seasons is you can't just live in survival mode. I think I was doing that for a long time, and even now I struggle with that at times of just, you're just surviving. You got to you think that it's going to be easier when you get to the next season of life. And I think that we need to stop lying to ourselves about that and realize that we are children of God. He is in control. I love your quote from your book that said that we have no control. Our only control is our self-control. I loved that quote. I feel like I should stitch that on a pillow. So, we have no control. We can control ourselves, but God is in control of everything. And so I love the verse from, is it Proverbs 16:9? Like, the heart of a man plans his way, but the Lord determines his steps, establishes his steps. And so we come up with our plan, but we have to realize that we live in an ever-changing world, and our kids are ever-changing. So we have to adjust our plans to what the Lord has given us, because He's sanctifying us. He's given us these children, these people that have beautiful minds for us to educate, and they are growing and learning. And yes, we are discipling them. And so we are teaching them the good ways of the Lord. And so there are ways that we discipline them to get them in line with what they should be doing. But then there's other things like their personalities that we need to adjust to and find ways to adapt for them. So for instance, for my older daughter, who is very type A, I actually had to learn how to plan for her. So we tried different planning systems and found what worked for her for school. But once we did that, she thrived. And that was something that was really helpful for me to learn. And then as she's gotten older, I've actually found what a beautiful thing it is to have someone in the family that is so good at organization that I've actually employed her, like actually paid her to organize things for me, because that isn't my, niche. So she's so good with that. And I've really come to appreciate her personality. So that's such a beautiful thing. And so anyway, I don't know if that answers your question about how we can adapt to different seasons, but it's something that the Lord really, I think, sanctifies us through by learning not to fight against those seasons, but learn to accept them and not always be looking for the way out or what's going to be the next season, thinking it's going to be easier, like just accepting the chaos, even making room in our plans for the chaos. I'm a pastor's wife, and so we always have church needs that come up. So I have to think that, hey, my whole week might be blown up because we've got to do this thing. And that's okay. That's part of what the Lord's given us as our ministry. Our kids have learned to adapt to it. I think that it's good for them to see that kind of service happening, and it teaches them different life skills and skills as a Christian that are good to have. So it's learning to trust the Lord, that He's in control, and those things that He gives you are from His hand, and learning to not just accept them and kind of trudge through them and wait for the next thing, but actually like take some enjoyment in them and what the Lord is teaching you, and trust that He's making you more like Christ, which is a beautiful thing. And we should love to have happen to us.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's about seeing God's hand at work in our life and what happens
Exactly.
in our days. Yeah. And even in the kids that He's given us, that, we all are sanctifying one another as we
being a
life.
parent is a really sanctifying process. Each of our kids, the Lord has definitely given. We have a vast array of personalities in our family. It's so fun to see them all be so different, and boys are so different than girls. And yeah, it's a fun ride for sure, being a parent.
Yeah, that ability to just adapt and not think that it's our job to make things go our way or make everyone march in lockstep with our vision is sometimes a very difficult lesson to learn.
Yes, it is. And something that I'm still learning. I'm definitely not perfect in this, and I still struggle, battle with what I've struggled with in the past, but it's something I'm continually learning. And my husband even helps me in that. He'll remind me, like we have to give our son some room to be a boy because we have 5 girls and we have 2 boys. And, our older boy is really different in age from the younger one because we just had a boy 3 years ago. So he is still young versus our 12-year-old boy. And so just learning how boys are different than girls when you're parenting so many girls and giving a boy that room to become a man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 12-year-old boys are a thing.
But I love seeing it. I'm learning a lot. I grew up with all girls, so I wasn't used to having a boy around. So it's been a really neat process. And even my child with so I have a child with dyslexia. This was something I wanted to share in case another parent was struggling with this in their homeschool. That was a season of learning to adapt to a child with dyslexia or any learning difference and understanding their needs in the same way that you go to a doctor's office and they give you that growth chart and it's a really large, range for what a child can fall in. And a doctor has told me before that as long as a child stays on the same curve, even if they're at the 5th percentile or 5th percentile versus the 90, or a 98th percentile, as long as the child is following the same curve, they don't worry about it, even in that large range.
Yeah.
And so just realizing that those range that our children develop their educational skills at a different rate than other kids and giving them room to grow at their own pace. They don't, I think so many times we lock that, what kids' educational skills should be in a box and we're comparing one kid to the next and having as many kids in our family as we do. It's, our kids compare themselves to each other, but just reminding them that, hey, there's a range. You are on your own path. And so my kid that had dyslexia, my goal for her was to not let her hate reading. I feel like that's something that a lot of children with dyslexia really battle is not liking books, but I didn't want to hurt my relationship with her by fighting with her over it. And I wanted her to love books in the end. That was my goal. And so this is years later and she loves books. Her favorite is she loves Jane Austen. We had a Jane Austen Christmas and she got everything Jane Austen for Christmas, a t-shirt, a book set, everything. And so, it's just I think it's important to give children that room to grow at their own pace and, help them find what they love in it and then not forcing it on them. And so I even found that giving for her I even gave her a gap year where we didn't even study reading at all for like a while. I just read to her. She just sat with our morning read alouds and, just giving some space like that actually helped instead of just the forcing reading at such a young age. So she started reading finally around the age of 10 and now she loves it. And I think, giving some space and just encouragement to parents that you can do that in that season of life as well.
Oh, that's great encouragement because it's so easy, I think, then as the parent who's responsible to teach them to read to just decide, well, it's not going to be possible, so I'm not going to try. A dyslexic child just isn't going to like reading. And
Right,
it doesn't have to be
exactly.
that way.
And there's so many things that can hit parents, whether, these different seasons that we're talking about, even when it comes to right now, I'm struggling with older kids and adding all the extracurriculars and just trying to adapt my schedule to not being home at all. Older kids are very different in what they need versus the little kids. When I thought I was going to drown when I was at home all the time. And now, as a parent with all these older kids, I miss those days where I was home all the time with the little kids. It's funny how that happens. But just trying to accept and not fight against. I'm really struggling in my spirit right now and just working, praying through with the Lord, like just help me accept where we're at in life. And just, so there's all these different ways that you can use those hard seasons to not just teach yourself. The Lord's not just teaching you, the Lord is teaching your children as well. And yeah, I just thinking, we're called to love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourself. And who is our neighbor if it's not our husband and our children? And I think we struggle sometimes with treating our family the worst,
Yeah.
like we put on a really good face for those outside our home, but we can speak harshly inside the home and just those seasons can really tackle your spirit in a hard way. And just even preparing your own soul that when you see something hard coming, just taking those times to pray, Lord, keep my tongue from bitter words and help me not to resent this in my spirit. And, just praying that the Lord would help you to be kind to your family, because I think that that's the quickest way that we sin is towards those who are in our immediate vicinity, when things go wrong.
So true. Come back next week for part 2 of my conversation with Lindsey, where she's going to share about one way her church has done some Titus 2 community building within their church, as well as providing opportunities for outreach to women within their community. On her website, reformedfaithandfamily.com, Lindsey also has a devotional and chore resource called Filling Hearts While Cleaning Homes, 5-minute devotionals for families. For the next 30 days, you can get this for free by using the code Mystie. Mystie. You can find the links and the information and the code and everything in the show notes, and be sure to come back for part 2 of this conversation.